Starting today, I don't think we'll finish it. We'll see. William Faulkner's Barn Burning, written in 1939. When's it set? What's the setting of Barn Burning? Time-wise, at least.
During the Great Depression.
No. A little earlier. Post-Civil War, but before the 20th century. There's a couple of lines. Yes?
1890?
1890s, more than like. Because there's a reference to one of the main characters who limps because he was shot in the heel during the Civil War. And there's some year reference. It's like, 30 years hence or 20 years hence or something like that. I don't remember the exact page. Okay, so late 19th century, where? Is this New England? Like Minister's Black Veil? No. Deep South. Okay? Almost. Had a graduate course that involved reading a lot of Faulkner. Almost all of Faulkner's novels are set in, I'm going to misspell it, so I'm going to look at the little bit of biographical material. Yeah. Okay, I won't remember that. Are set in, bottom of page 404 in your text is the name of the county. I can never remember how to spell this. Napa-Tawpha. Yoknapatawpha, that's it. County, which is a county Faulkner makes up. Okay. In Mississippi. Faulkner's from Mississippi. Won the Nobel Prize in 1950 for literature. You've got a picture of his house, which I think is a pretty good indication probably of the house that we get a description of in this short story, okay? Just read a little bit of biography about him. There on 403, 403 through 405. There's another biographical note about Faulkner on page 77, which I don't remember being in there at all. Yeah, at the bottom of page 77, right? Always wanted to be a writer. First several years had a hard time of it, and then, kind of had a breakthrough in the 20s and such. So we're going to focus on Barn Burning, written in 1939. So again, let me emphasize that setting. Post-Civil War, Mississippi. Okay? So, what should one immediately assume? And he's writing this, bear in mind, in the 30s. As a white, southern, quote-unquote, gentleman. There's probably going to be language that will offend modern sensibilities. He uses words that aren't used in quote-unquote polite society today. Turn on the radio, you hear them all over the place, all right? Depending on the kind of music you listen to. So I'm just warning, folks. First paragraph. First paragraph. Let's see, it stops there. The store in which the Justice of the Peace's Court was sitting smelled of cheese. Relatively short sentence, perfectly clear and understandable. Look at the second sentence. The second sentence begins with the boy and doesn't end until you get down to the old fierce pull of blood. It is a long, convoluted, complex sentence. That is Faulkner style. I mean, that's defines Faulkner. Long, convoluted, complex. He packs a lot of information in those sentences. Okay? The boy, crouched on his nail keg at the back of the crowded room, knew he smelled cheese and more. From where he sat, he could see the ranked shelves close packed with the solid, squat, dynamic shapes of tin cans, whose labels his stomach read, not from the lettering, which meant nothing to his mind, but from the scarlet devils and the silver curve of fish. This, the cheese, which he knew he smelled, and the hermetic meat, which his intestines believed he smelled, coming in intermittent gusts, momentary and brief, between the other constant one. The smell and sense just a little of fear, because mostly of despair and grief. The old fierce pull of blood. The whole sentence builds to that final phrase. The old fierce pull of blood. So, finish the paragraph and then talk about it for a moment. He could not see the table where the justice sat, before which his father and his father's enemy, parentheses, italics, our enemy. Okay? He thought in that despair, ourn. Mine and his and both. He's my father. Stood. But he could hear them, the two of them that is, because his father had said no word yet. So in the italics, just for a moment, in the parentheses, what do the italics mean? Why are those words italicized?
It's like narrating like his first person perspective.
The narrator is taking us into his mind. Those are the boy's thoughts. Okay? So the narrator at the beginning of the story, the opening, if we were to just take this paragraph, you would say the narrator is either omniscient or limited omniscient. Because the boy hasn't said anything, right? We don't see or hear the boy speaking, but we hear the boy's thoughts because the narrator is peeked into the boy's mind. Now we have to wait and read the whole story to find out whether in fact the narrator is omniscient. Do we drop into other people's minds without them speaking? Many other people's, okay? Or do we drop into only one or two or three? So usually the difference between an omniscient narrator and a limited omniscient narrator is with a limited omniscient narrator, you only hear the thoughts of two or maybe three people, okay? So, what have we been told about the boy? Leave his thoughts alone for a moment. What have we been told about the boy in this paragraph? What can you say about him? He's what?
He's scared.
Scared? What's he scared of?
He sounds worried.
Okay, what else? Can he read? You're saying no, why?
Because he said when he was looking at the cheese labels, he said he was reading with his stomach rather than his head.
When he looks at the labels on the tin cans, he can't read those labels. He sees the pictures. The pictures tell him what's in the cans. The fish in the Scarlet Devil, that is like a brand mark, a trademark. Like the Nike swoosh. You see something with a Nike with the swoosh on it, what's it tell you? It's made by Nike. You see a pair of shoes with 3 stripes, Adidas. Okay? A leaping cat, Puma, etc. The Red Devils tell him what's in the can because he's seen those kinds of cans before opened. All right? So, what else? So he can't read. We're told something about his intestines. What? Why? Why can he, quote unquote, smell stuff? Is it literal smelling? You pick up a can of tuna fish, closed, sealed, and go, do you smell the tuna fish inside? You better not. Because if you do, that can is not sealed properly. Or any canned good. Okay? He can't literally smell this stuff. So why does the narrator describe it this way? What else about the boy? So he can't read. He's hungry. He looks at that food. He thinks he smells it. Why? Because he's hungry. He knew he smelled cheese. He could see the ranked shells, close packed, etc., etc. The shapes of tin cans whose labels his stomach read. He sees those. Why his stomach? Because his stomach probably turns a little bit at that point. Not turn like he's getting ready to vomit, but hunger pangs. Not from the lettering, which meant nothing to his mind. The cheese, which he knew he smelled, that is, up here, he thinks he smells it. Okay? And the hermetic meat, which his intestines believed he smelled, coming in intermittent gusts, momentary and brief, between the other constant one. The smell and sense, just a little of fear. Okay? Because mostly of despair and grief, the old fierce pull of blood. What's the old fierce pull of blood? By the way, that is a theme that resonates throughout all of Faulkner. What's he mean by that? Every one of you probably has experienced what he means by the old fierce pull of blood. Okay, just let that question hang, because it's going to come up a lot. So he hears these words. But what proof have you, Mr. Harris? That's the justice of the peace speaking. I told you, now Mr. Harris responds. The hog got into my corn. I caught it up, sent it back to him. He had no fence that would hold it. I told him so. I warned him. Next time I put the hog in my pen. So the person that Mr. Harris is talking about, that person's hog now has gotten out twice, right? So the hog gets out once. I told him. I warned him. He didn't have a fence. The next time I put the hog in my pen, okay? When he came to get it, I gave him enough wire to patch up his pen. The next time, third time now, that the person's hog has gotten out. Okay. So why is Mr. Harris concerned about this guy's hog getting out? Describe a hog. Is this a cute little pig? Porky pig? No. Some hogs, I've seen them, shoulder, tall as I am. Big suckers. What will they do if they get into your stuff that you're growing? They'll eat it all. Okay? So Mr. Harris gives the person whose hog is getting out enough fencing, enough wire to fix his pen. That is, to keep his hog enclosed. Next time I put the hog up and kept it. Fourth time. Rode down to his house, saw the wire I gave him, still rolled on to the spool in his yard. So he didn't give him just a little bit of wire. He gave him a spool of wire. All right? What does this show on Mr. Harris's part? That it shows Mr. Harris is lazy?
No, it shows the abdomen.
It shows the other guy's lazy. Possibly. It might be laziness or it might be something else. Okay? But what does it show about Mr. Harris? The guy who gave him the wire. The guy who gave him multiple warnings. Is he going out of his way to kind of attempt to be nice? Yes, he is. Okay? This would be like, I've got neighbors who have dogs. horrible dogs because they're not played with and all that kind of stuff. And they bark incessantly. I would literally walk on my front porch and those dogs are barking. I go in my garage, those dogs are barking. And they've got 5 of them. 3 big ones, no, 6. 3 big ones and 3 little rat dogs that have no reason for existing. Anyways, if those dogs get out, and 1 or 2 of them get out at least once a week, if I were Mr. Harris, I would find wherever the holes are and fix them. Okay? I'm not Mr. Harris because I'm not as, what I want to do is, and I've got dogs too, and my dogs used to get out until I, fixed all our fences and stuff. So, he says, I rode down, saw the wire, told him he could have the hog when he paid me $1 a pound fee. That even in a nigger came with $1 and got the hog. See, there's an example of a word that we wouldn't use generally, but Faulkner, this is 1939, Mississippi. It's used daily, all right? He says, he came with the $1 and got the hog. He said, he say to tell you, so the person that was sent says, he say to tell you, wood and hay can burn. What's that mean? Watch out. I said, what? That what he say to tell you. Wood and hay can burn. That night my barn burned. Got the stock out, got its animals out, but I lost the barn. Where's the nigger? That is, where's the man who sent to you? Have you got him? I don't know. But that's not proof. Why is it not proof? What is that called in a court of law? If you've ever watched a TV law crime show, it's hearsay evidence. What does he need for that to be proof? The man who said it can't, wood and hay can burn, is the one who's got to say it in the court. But he's not there. Get that boy up here, Mr. Harris says. He knows. And for a moment, the boy thought, too, that the man meant his older brother. So notice, again, without any italics, the narrator has taken us inside the boy's mind. Not him, that is, not the older brother, who's sitting up by the father, the little one, the boy. And crouching, small for his age, small and wiry like his father. Notice a little bit of description coming out about the father. In patched and faded jeans, even too small for him. What does that tell us? They're poor. Patched and faded, too small for him. So his jeans barely touch his ankles because he's outgrowing them. With straight, uncombed, brown hair and eyes, gray and wild as storm scud, he saw the men between himself and the table part and become a lane of grim faces. Like now he's got to walk the gauntlet. Okay? And the boy thinks, he aims for me to do it, he thought. He aims for me to lie. Who's the he? His father. Not Mr. Harris. Not the justice of the peace. And I will have to do hit. Why hit? Dialect. This is an indication of the socioeconomic status of this family. Ourn, his'n, and mine, they're poor, uneducated, lower class. Okay? How lower class are they? They're sharecroppers. Okay? We'll talk about that in a moment. So, boy walks up. What's your name, boy? The justice asks. Colonel Sartor Snopes. Hey? Talk louder. Colonel Sartorius. Reckon anybody named for Colonel Sartorius in this country can't help but tell the truth. Colonel Sartorius Snubs would be for the South, for his imaginary county, like somebody, a boy in the late 1880s or 90s, also of Mississippi, being named Jefferson Davis, President of the Confederacy, who is also from Mississippi. If you're a real, true believer in the Southern cause, you name your children, your sons, after Jefferson Davis, Jackson, etc., Robert E. Lee, such. Okay? Colonel Sartorius Snopes is a guy who figures, or a name that figures in a lot of Faulkner's novels. He's held up and revered by everyone. Okay. Probably not literally everyone, but by, white society, so to speak. So, well, if you're named after him, then I reckon you got to tell the truth. And the boy thinks, enemy, enemy. Who's he thinking enemy about?
The enemy is the judge.
It's the justice of the peace who's speaking. Is the justice of the peace the boy's enemy? No. Because he looks to Mr. Harris, and we're told the boy, for a moment, line just after the number 10 in the right-hand column, about 2 lines down, for a moment he could not see that the justice's face was kindly. The justice is looking at this boy with concern and compassion. Why? What does he know? What situation is he putting the boy in? By calling him up to testify.
Against his father.
He's got to speak against his father. Okay? He's like, I can't do that. Do you want me to question this boy? Really? I mean, you really want me to force this boy to answer questions about this man here, his father, Mr. Harris? No damnation, send him out of here. What's that tell us about Mr. Harris? He's also kind. Okay? By not forcing the boy to answer questions, what are they, reading into it a little bit, but I think it's safe to do this, what are they trying to do for the boy? What may happen if the boy does answer all their questions?
Yeah, accidentally put him in jail.
Okay, put him in jail, the father. What else? What if they can't find the father guilty?
Yeah, then he might receive punishment from his father.
Then dad might beat the what out of him. Okay? Obviously, if he's okay with burning down barns, a little bit of a violent streak, maybe. Okay? So, the justice of the peace closes the case. He can't find against Snopes. We're finally told the person's last name. Can't find against you, Snopes, but I can give you advice. Leave this country and don't come back to it. He doesn't mean country, United States. He means this country where we are right now, like county. Leave this country and go to Smyrna. His father spoke for the first time, his voice cold and harsh, level, without emphasis. I aim to. I don't figure to stay in a country among people who, and then he says something that isn't printed. Why? Because it's unprintable. It's bad language. That'll do. In other words, watch your tongue. Take your wagon and get out of this country before dark. Case dismissed. Father turned, and the boy follows, notice we're told, the stiff black coat. The wiry figure walking a little stiffly from where a Confederate provost man's musket ball had taken him in the heel on a stolen horse 30 years ago. Okay, This is the narrator telling us information about the father. Who was he shot by? A Confederate soldier. Why was he shot? Because he was stealing horses. Okay, if you know anything about 19th century law and stuff, more so in the quote unquote Old West than in the South, you steal somebody's horse. Whew. That's about the lowest of low you can get. Why? Because a man's horse was everything. Transportation, work. You use a horse to haul. Followed the two backs now, father and brother, since his older brother had appeared from somewhere. And as he goes past the last group of people, somebody hisses, "Barn burner," about the father. It's not about the boy or his brother. Again, he could not see. Whirling. What's the whirling? It's the boy turns quickly. Why does he turn quickly? Yeah, you called my daddy a name. I'm going to defend my daddy's honor. The old, fierce pull of blood is about what? Family. Sticking with your family. No matter what. Okay? So, finds himself down in the dirt. His father picks him up. Get in the wagon. He gets in the wagon. The mother starts to get out of the wagon. But he's hurt. Gotta clean him. Shut up. Get back in the wagon. He doesn't say shut up. Get back. He probably does, actually. Get back in the wagon. He gets into the mother. Does it hurt? Nah, you don't hurt. Let me be. Wipe some of it. Let me be. Okay? So the boy doesn't want to be comforted by his mother, doesn't want to be cleaned up. So they get in the wagon, they go on. That night, they camp in a grove of oaks. His father starts a little fire. How does he start the fire, and where does he get the wood for the fire? Second question is more important. From a fence. He takes, a picket or a split rail from a fence and starts to burn it. Is the fence his? No, it is not. Okay? Does he build a nice big fire to keep everybody good and warm?
Small fire.
No, it's a little tiny fire, we're told. Long description of it. Second paragraph on page 408. A small fire, neat, niggard almost, Niggard. What does that word mean? Penny pinching. He's not extravagant with fire. He's very, or chintzy with it. He's cheap with it. All right? Niggardly means, you spend very, very little money on it. Okay? So he's got just barely a fire going, really. A shrewd fire. Such fires were his father's habit and custom always, even in freezing weather. It's like fire serves another purpose for this man. It's not for heat. Okay? Older, notice, the boy might have remarked this. That is, if the boy was older, notice I'm throwing in the if, or when the boy was older. The narrator is telling us the boy at some point will be older. Okay? He might have remarked this and wondered, why not a big one? Why not? Why should not? A man who had not only seen the waste and extravagance of war, but who had in his blood an inherent voracious prodigality with material not his own, have burned everything in sight. Notice, a voracious prodigality with material not his own. What does it mean if you have a voracious appetite?
Hungry.
Okay? He's more than just hungry. You eat everything in sight. It's like you go to some place that, serves the buffet type thing, and you just, you get a plate and you just keep piling and piling, and then you go back for more and more. So he has a voracious prodigality with material not his own. If you're a prodigal, it's the exact opposite of being niggardly. That means you're wasteful. So he has a voracious wastefulness with what?
Other people's.
Stuff that isn't his. Okay? Like, I'm going to waste all your money, but I'm not going to spend a dime of mine. Or I'm going to waste all your wood, but I'm not going to burn mine. Why wouldn't he have burned everything that is older? The boy might have thought about this. Then he might have gone a step farther, and thought that, well, that's the reason. That niggard blaze, that little, small, cheap blaze, was the living fruit of nights passed during those 4 years in the woods, hiding from all men, blue or gray. What's the 4 years? 1861 to 1865, the Civil War. Notice he's hiding from blue and gray. What side did he fight on? Yeah. He's from Mississippi. What side should he have fought on? I did my PhD in Mississippi. And believe me, when my wife and I first drove, almost literally, when we crossed the Alabama line into Mississippi, I mean, it was like going 40 years in the past. This was in 1989. It was like going 30, 40 years in the past. I mean, almost immediately we came across a road construction crew or road repair crew, and there were, I'm not kidding, there were like probably 8 white supervisors and a dozen or so black workers. And the white supervisors were doing exactly what supervising sounds like. Standing around. And the black road crew, they were working like crazy. Sweat pouring. And I remember looking at my wife going, what the hell just happened? I mean, it was like, okay. We were coming from Orlando, Florida. So, during those 4 years, notice, he can't have big fires when he's hiding in the woods at night. Why? Because he'll get caught. With his strings of horses, captured horses, he called them, his father called them. He captured the horses because they were what? Loose. You capture loose things, not stolen. And older still, that is, and as the boy got even older, he might have divined the true reason. That the element of fire spoke to some deep mainspring of his father's being, as the element of steel or powder spoke to other men. Steel or powder? Steel, swords, knives possibly, powder, muskets, rifles, pistols. What he's talking about, elements of what? Death. Elements of causing death. You stab someone with a sword, you shoot someone with a pistol, or you burn someone alive. I've been on fire before. You definitely want item, door 1 or 2. You don't want to die by being burned alive. Fire is extremely painful, okay? So, as the one weapon for the preservation of integrity. Notice, he uses fire to preserve his integrity. What's meant by integrity? I think I have on the introduction to your quiz that's due tonight. If I have that introduction turned on, I think I do. A comment about, I'm relying on your honor and sense of integrity. What does that mean? your personal moral code, which hopefully, partially, I could draw a Venn diagram, which hopefully partially aligns with mine. And part of that is I won't cheat because I'm better than that. Okay? Somebody's already tried in either this class or my second class because they answered one of the questions, and it was one of the questions that I specifically mentioned in class last week. I said, this question is going to show up on a quiz. This is not the right answer. And I told you what were the wrong answers. And then I mentioned something about what the right answers were. Somebody did that. They did the exact thing I said not to do. It was somebody who wasn't here for class that day, that first day of class. Anyways, so the one weapon for the preservation of integrity. Well, integrity is based upon, and honor is based upon your sense of what about yourself? Yourself. Who you are. How you see yourself. How many of you wake up in the morning and just go, I'm just a rotten person. I'm just foul. I hate everybody. I'm going to blow up the world, Kind of like, what Alfred tells Batman / Bruce Wayne. Some people just want to see the world burn. You wake up and go, I just want to burn the world. Not many people are like that. Those who are become what? Serial killers. They start with kittens and dogs and move up to little boys and little girls and then big boys and big girls and etc. Okay? What's the saying about Abner, the father's sense of integrity? It's all wrapped up about and around what other people think of him. He wants other people to know what? Don't mess with me. Why? Because wood and hay can burn. Else breath were not worth the breathing. That is, if you don't preserve your own integrity, why go on living? And hence to be regarded with respect, that is, what's to be regarded with respect? Not my sense of integrity. It's fire. Because fire is used to protect your integrity. So, fire you should respect and use with discretion. So what's the point of fire? The narrator is suggesting for Abner. It's to preserve his sense of honor. It's to let others know you can go so far. But you cross me, I'm going to burn it down. Okay? But the boy didn't think about all that now, the narrator says. He'd seen those blazes all his life. Father says, come with me. You were fixing, and by the way, I think it's on YouTube. There's a great little short film of this with a very young Tommy Lee Jones as Abner Snopes. I mean, and he nails it. I mean, he gets the character down perfect. He's got to be 35, maybe 40 in it. You would have told him. The boy doesn't answer. Smack. Struck him with the flat of his hand on the side of his head. Hard, but without heat. And we're going to hear that phrase, without heat, several times. Because heat is what? Heat's symbolic of fire. He doesn't use fire, generously. So, hard but without heat means really without emotion. Just smacks him. Okay? Answer. Yes. Another. Yeah, you're right. I was going to tell him. So, question. Is the boy telling the truth? Or is he telling his father what he thinks his father wants to hear? I kind of think he's telling his father what his father wants. Yes, I would have told him what might happen if he doesn't. Tell me true. What is one of the arguments against torture? If you torture somebody enough, they'll do what?
Tell you what you want.
Yeah, they'll tell you whatever you want to know. Okay? Which is why if you're going to quote unquote torture somebody, you need to have somebody else to torture also, who also knows what you think the other person knows, so that you can compare stories. The only way you know one of them is lying is because the other one doesn't say the same thing kind of a thing. Okay? So, going to bed will be there tomorrow. Tomorrow they were there. So how far away do they move from the opening of the story? A day's journey. Okay? Or half a day's journey. And we're told, wagon stopped before a paintless two-room house, identical almost with the dozen others. So this is the 13th house, shack, hovel. It had stopped before even in the boys' 10 years. Okay? They've moved 13 times. This is the 13th move in the boys' 10 years of being alive. Why? More than likely,
Keep doing it.
because hay and wood can burn. That's the implication. They keep having to move because Dad's got a fire twitch. Keeps burning down people's barns. One of the sisters, he's got two sisters and a brother, says, likely it ain't fitting for hogs. So if the house isn't fit for hogs, what's the sister saying about the people that are going to live there? Lower than hogs? Nevertheless, fit it will, and you'll hog it and like it. His father said, get out of them chairs. Help your ma unload. So the two sisters get down and notice the description of them. Big, bovine. What's bovine? Cow-like. Okay? In a flutter of cheap ribbons, one of them drew from the tumbled wagon, etc. And we get descriptions. So the father then says to the boy, the younger boy, Sardi, Colonel Sartoris, come with me, yet you, mother, Abner. Notice, nothing else, just Abner. I reckon I'll have a word with the man that aims to begin tomorrow, owning me body and soul for the next 8 months. How's he going to own him for the body and soul? Okay. I mentioned they are, and I'm putting the hyphen there, you don't need to. It's actually one word. They're sharecroppers. So what do you do when you sharecrop? You can almost put an A in here. Share a crop. It's kind of, big kind of, like slavery. But it's temporary. That's the difference. It's more like indentured servitude. A lot of the first settlers, not first, the second big wave of immigration in the United States, or during the colonial period, many of those people came over as indentured servants. That is, they agreed to work for somebody for 3, 5, 7, whatever years. Once that term, that contract was done, they received their freedom. All right? So, when you sharecrop, let's assume you've got, these are acres. No, that doesn't make any sense doing it that way. Let's assume you've got 400 square acres, okay? You might enter a negotiation with the owner of that property where the owner says, okay, out of that 400, you get 20 for yourself. So, you farm, you plant, you care for you harvest all of this, 380 acres, and you have to produce X number of bushels of that 380, maybe they're growing corn, okay? You've got to produce X number of bushels. Whatever you produce from this 20 acres, that's all yours. You get everything from that. But if you don't produce, let's say, it's 1,000 bushels of corn you're supposed to produce. Let's say you only produce 900 bushels. Then that means out of whatever you grew here, 100 bushels of that has got to go to make up this. Okay? So, it could be bad, right? It might be a bad growing season. So, that's why he says, I'm going to go meet the man who's going to own me, body and soul, for the next 8 months. Why 8 months? Beginning of planting season to end of harvest season. So they go back up the road. And they come to a grove of oaks and cedars and flowering trees and shrubs. They find this lane. And he's walking behind his father. And he thinks, page 409, for all the 12 moonings they had sojourned until now in a poor country, a land of small farms, fields, houses. He had never seen a house like this before. It's big as a courthouse. We'll go back and look at that picture of Rowan Oaks, the name of Faulkner's home, on pages 405 and 406. 404 and 405. It's a pretty big house. And the boy thinks, they are safe from him. People who live in a big old house like this, he can't touch them. People whose lives are a part of this place, peace and dignity are beyond his touch. He no more to them than a buzzing wasp. In other words, the boy thinks, Daddy's a bug compared to the people who must live in here. Capable of stinging for a little moment, but that's all. The spell of this peace and dignity rendering even the barns and stable and cribs which belong to it impervious to the puny flames he might contrive. He can't touch them. Okay? So, they keep walking down the lane, and as they're walking down the drive towards the house, there's a pile of horse dung. And his father, who, has a limp, sees that pile of horse dung, and the boy sees the pile of horse dung, and he thinks he's going to step around it. And he plants his foot right into it. Gets up to the house, knocks on the door, servant opens the door, get out of my way, nigger. He steps in the door on a beautiful cream-colored rug. The mistress, Major Despain's wife, not mistress, illicit, whatever, comes down, tells him to get out of her house. Her husband's not home. He says, I will. And he plants his good foot in the middle of that rug, the bad foot, the bad ankle, which has horse dung all over his boot. He does this. And inscribes a half-circle arc of horse crap on this rug. And then they leave, and they turn around, or he turns around, and they follow home. And the father says, as they turn around and look at the house, page 410. Pretty and white, ain't it? That's sweat. In other words, it's sweat that made that house. Nigger sweat. Maybe it ain't white enough yet to suit him. Maybe he wants to make some white sweat with it. Tells us what about Abner? Does he respect? The house? The people who live in the house? Nope. Why not? Because they're rich and he's not. That's pretty much it. Okay? They leave. They go back home. Major Despain shows up at the house. He has the rug rolled up. What's he say? Clean the rug. You ruined my wife's rug. Clean it. And he's like, yeah, you shouldn't have left the rug where it was. Okay? So the boy says he'll do it. The wife says she'll do it. He said, no, I'll do it. How does he clean the rug? Let me rephrase that. First of all, does he clean the rug? Does he remove the horse dung stain from the rug? Actually, he does. He gets a stone and he starts to scrub the rug. This is, no washing machines. Okay? They're poor. They don't even have a hand crank kind of thing. He gets a stone. He gets lime soap. What is lime? It's an acid. And he gets the lime soap and the stone and he scrubs and he scrubs and he scrubs. So if that rug, if you're looking at that rug cross section, and here's the bottom warp and woof, and that rug has these fibers, when you get to where the stain was, it's now like this. And then it goes back up. He's worn it down. So the stain's gone. But now you got this big old, shallow spot, worn spot in the rug. Okay? Page 76. Page 413. How much time do we have? Not enough. New trial, new courtroom scene. Not a little courtroom, it's the general store again. Why are they back in another courtroom? Yeah, because Major Despain's brought him up on charges of damaging the rug. And a judge has to determine the right and wrongness of those charges. A judge has to determine, what's going to happen as a result. So, we will stop there and pick up with 413 on Friday. We've only got 4 more pages. And start, a good man is hard to find. On your syllabus, the electronic version, there is a link to a YouTube audio of Flannery O'Connor reading that short story. Listen to it, please, because she's going to present a much different kind of reading than I do. The way she reads it, it's funny. I don't find it all that funny, okay? We'll talk about that. It's pretty interesting to listen to her read it also. All right, have a good day.